Hi everyone, welcome back. So in the last video we took a look at the problem solving process in terms of what steps do we have to go through to crack a business case and to solve any business problem really. We saw that it was a 6-step approach with communication at the heart of all of these 6 steps. In this video we're going to talk about the key principles or the things to keep in mind and to always follow while you're going through that particular process. So last time we spoke about steps, this time we're going to talk about the principles to apply. And again, this might seem a little high level at the beginning of the course, but trust me, this is really important and it will come up in every single piece of practice that we're going to do. So I highly recommend that you try to internalize these concepts, because they're going to be super helpful in building your intuition and making you able to think on your feet during an interview and not be following just a rigid standardized process that the interviewer might diverge from at some point. You don't find yourself panicking and not being able to adapt. These principles are what going to help you adapt very quickly. So let's dive right in. So if you think about the problem-solving process, right? What is the output that we're after in solving any business case, in an interview or in real life? We're really trying to find value-generating, actionable, and optimal solutions to a given business opportunity or challenge. The problem does not have to be a challenge. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can be an opportunity. Quite often it is. But the key thing here is value generating, actionable, and optimal. Now, when we say value generating, that's really the output of the process, of that problem solving 6-step process that we talked about, right? We want the output of that to be generating value. Value could be revenue, cost, market share, a lot of different things. But the key thing to not forget is what you're after, generating value. You're not here to solve a problem mathematically or anything, and your interviewer is going to be very aware of that. Even if they don't explicitly say it, they're going to be very, very aware of what you're trying to solve for. Now, the second thing, which is very often ignored by interviewees, is it actionable or not? Are you suggesting something out of your problem-solving process that is doable and is actionable? That could act as a filter on what what solutions you suggest. So my favorite example is often healthcare. If we're given a healthcare case, or if you're in real life working on a healthcare business problem, quite often we know very ideal solutions that are very value generating, but they're not actionable because there's a particular regulation that prevents us from doing it. For example, healthcare is a highly regulated space. So you want to be actionable in what you recommend, even if if other options sound more ideal or more value generating. You want to apply that filter of being actionable. The third thing is being optimal. And that one is a little tricky. You want to apply a sanity check to your solutions to understand that, hey, even if it's value generating and even if it's actionable / doable, is it the best alternative? There's usually more than one solution and more than one route to take to any given solution. So which one is the optimal one? This is more of an efficiency or sanity check. And you want to, in this case, take into consideration things like competition, alternative solutions, opportunity cost, all these different things. Now, what I want to say here is these are principles to keep at the back of your head or at the back of your mind while you're going through the process. Just quickly apply them intuitively, excuse me, And just don't forget about them, because sometimes you'll find yourself cracking the case in a very, very efficient way, but arriving at a very non-optimal solution because there's a much easier one that would generate 90% of the value. So just keep these things in mind. The other thing to keep in mind when thinking about these three things is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It'll never be perfect. It'll never be, the ideal solution. Don't think about optimal as an absolute term. It's just a sanity check. That's all. Now, let's talk for a second about what it takes to be a strong problem solver. You want to do four things, really. Be hypothesis driven, be empirical, which might sound like a contradiction, but it isn't, and I'll explain why in a second. Be iterative, and then finally be comprehensive. With hypotheses, it is extremely important to avoid cold starts. And what I mean by that is when you have a problem, and quite often we don't know what the root causes of it are. Our costs are high. Why? Well, we don't have the data. Okay, let's form a few hypotheses. We know that this company has many, many offices around the world. Could that be the driver of the cost? Is it SG&A? And let's, go down that route, do the analyses, and see if that's true or not. So even if you don't know why your costs are high, you can form some of these hypotheses really quickly based on intuition, logic, sometimes that you ask a few questions here and there to find some anecdotes. And anecdotes are a really good starting point for forming hypotheses. But then you want to go to step 2 as quickly as possible, which is being empirical. To validate these hypotheses, you want to be data-driven, fact-based. And if you remember, when we talked about the actual process, the 6-step process that we follow, that these characteristics apply to, right here, defining the problem and structuring the problem are hypothesis-driven. And most of the time, so is prioritizing issues. But then when you're analyzing and synthesizing steps 4 and 5, you really want to be empirical, fact-based. You're validating hypotheses here. Now, you also want to make sure that you're iterative. You can pivot, you can test, you can repeat, because in the interview, quite often they will actually ask you to consider a different solution. Or, hey, yeah, that sounds like a logical structure. How else can you structure that problem? So be open always in interviews and in real life to iterations and to repeating things or pivoting from things. And then finally, you want to ask yourself always throughout this entire process of 6 steps, the question of what dogs aren't barking. Number 4 here on this slide. Meaning, have I thought about everything? Or are there other dogs that I'm not aware of just because they're not barking yet, but they're there? So ask yourself that. And let's give a quick example here. And let's follow the same example we've been talking about. Costs are high. We have a lot of offices. And that is a hypothesis. And I'm going to go out and get some data to empirically verify it. And we go out and we see that, yes, the cost of having so many offices is really high and is like 50% of our total cost. Good. We've arrived at the conclusion. Well, no, not really. Because what you didn't realize is that, there is a cost that is 40% of your cost base that is travel costs for your employees. I'm just making up stuff here, right? This is just a hypothetical example to illustrate the point. And that is a dog that isn't barking. You haven't looked at it. You didn't see the data because nobody gave it to you. So you want to really be comprehensive. And the only way to be comprehensive is to be hypothesis driven again. So you iterate again and form other hypotheses. Well, if we have so many different offices, are employees traveling between them a lot? Could that also be a bucket of cost that I'm missing? And so on and so forth. You're iterating over it. So anyway, this was a quick overview of conceptually what are the principles and the goals of the business problem solving process. These are principles that you want to just keep in mind. They're sort of guidelines, but the real process is this, the 6-step process. And these principles apply to every step of it. It's sort of the spirit of applying this 6-step process. And you want to keep that in mind while you're doing cases, while you're practicing, and in real life as well. So I hope this was helpful. Starting the next video, we're going to get a lot more focused on the problem solving process. We're going to go through problem definition, structuring the problem, all these things in detail with examples. So hopefully it'll be a lot more hands-on and less theoretical. But I thought this was extremely important to set these principles in place first. So yeah, see you in the next video.